All right, everybody, you are listening to It's a Man's World on WGNS Radio. Of course, I'm D. Brew. I'm joined by Corey, producer Dave, and from time to time, we like to have guests on the show, especially guests that can talk sports with us, and that's always a blast. So we got somebody on today that actually, I met him first at Sports Fest. He was set up there, he was set up in a way that kind of made me jealous because I wanted to be doing that, but it was spectacular. He had some great guests, and his name is Jason Fitz, and I was sitting there going, who is this guy, and how's he getting Titans players to come by, and how's he getting everybody to call in? So we'll talk about all that. But, Jason, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for calling in.
Guys, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. It's going to be a blast.
All right. So, well, let's get started about you, some, I guess, background information. Now, I don't know that there's many people with sports podcasts that probably play the fiddle and also graduated from Juilliard. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think the thing is when you grow up a fiddle player, when you grow up a classical violinist, you learn as much about football as you can because it's about the only connection to manhood that you have, I think. So, I grew up a big football fanatic, but, as a classical violin kid, I was practicing, 8 hours a day by the time I was 8 years old. So there wasn't really a lot of opportunity to explore my lack of athleticism until later in life. So the podcast kind of became my later in life passion project to talk about it since I can't play it.
Nice. And so you play with the band Perry, is that right?
Right. Yeah, I tour with the band Perry. I've been with the Perrys for a little over 4 years. So we've had an amazing run and been able to see most of the world and get to go out to. It's crazy. It's awesome. It's amazing. But at the same time, in 2013, I think it was, we were gone 300 days in the calendar year. So it's been chaotic. But through all of that, even when I was sitting in the middle of Norway, I was still putting podcasts up every week. So, it makes it a challenge sometimes, but that's a first world problem.
Right. Now, you are, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I've been listening to your show. That's where I got most information. You're an Oakland Raiders fan?
Yeah. I grew up in Vegas, and my dad is a big Raiders fan. And when I was a kid, they were in L.A., which is part of why I'm completely indifferent to where the Raiders play, whether it's Oakland or L.A. and all of that. I grew up with the L.A. Raiders, and Vegas, when I was a kid, was definitely a Raiders town, still is. So it's been ingrained. I've had like 5 good seasons in my life, but boy, were they good when they got there.
Right. Now, me and Corey, we're Titans fans through and through. So right now, if you had to evaluate both franchises, who do you think has the brighter future in the next couple of years, the Raiders or the Titans?
Here's the thing with all of this, and obviously living in Nashville, I follow the Titans a lot. And the thing with the roster is evaluation always seems to start with hope at quarterback. And that's what right now, for the first time since Rich Gannon left the Raiders fan base feels like they have hope. Derek Carr has come in and played well, and it's given the Raiders fan base enough reason to think that, hey, we're moving in the right direction. And that's what, there's still a level of unsurety with the Titans. And I think that's the problem. I had Jason LaCanfora on the podcast several times from CBS, and he came out and said that the NFL, or the Titans, in his opinion, have the worst roster top to bottom in the NFL. I don't know if I agree with that, but I think both rosters, front and top to bottom, no matter how you look at it, both rosters need playmakers, and that's what they, that's the difference through all of this. They need guys that can come in and make big plays.
Wow, worst roster. I mean, yeah, sitting through this last year, there might be a little bit of truth to that. I don't know that I'm sold on Mettenberger too much. I mean, no, I'm not sold on him at all. Let me back up off that statement. So I'm curious to see how the draft goes. Well, I mean, it doesn't appear they're going to take a quarterback, but what do I know? I'm not in the front office or anything. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, I definitely want to get your opinion. I mean, this free agency has been insane, really. I mean, first day out of the gate, we've got quarterbacks trading teams. We've got running backs going here, this running back going there. I mean, in your opinion, what's been the biggest free agency move to this point?
I don't know that there's one that hits me as the biggest, but I think the Buffalo Bills at this point. The Buffalo Bills deserve a lot of praise. Because they were able to re-sign their free agents that were out there on defense that they really wanted, and they were able to trade for a running back that, is still, at least in theory, in his prime. They upgraded at running back. They traded for Matt Castle. I know that's not a big name, but that upgrades in the quarterback, and they were able to keep their pieces in place at receiver. I mean, that in defense, and they've got a great young receiver. I think that really stands out to me as maybe the best collection of moves. And to go back real quick, I don't know that anybody's sold on Mettenberger. You mentioned that a second ago, and I do want to retrace to that. I think that the solidarity behind Mettenberger right now is a little bit because they like what they have, but I think it's also a lot because nobody's really certain that there is that guy at quarterback right now, and that's what's missed. If there's that guy, I mean, I don't know that if Andrew Luck was sitting there and that type of player at the number 2 pick, obviously we think the Titans would take somebody like that. But I think the general consensus from everybody I've talked to, from everybody I've heard from, is that guy doesn't exist. So instead of reaching for a quarterback at the top of the draft, why not address a different need and then wait and see if next year's quarterback class gives you a better solution?
So, hey, this is Corey now. We're talking free agents. You mentioned Andrew Luck. I mean, the AFC South, the Jags have been bad. The Titans have been bad. Houston's been kind of up and down. The Colts went out and got some pretty good free agents, so they're pretty much I'm assuming, gonna win the AFC South again. I look at it like, and probably every other Titans fan out there is like, every year the Titans go out there and like, yeah, it's free agency. There's so many things we could do, and then usually they pretty much don't do anything, or they go out and get some guy who went to University of Tennessee, 15 years ago, and they get him because he's a UT guy or something. What's his name? Carl Pickens, or back in the day, or they get like these guys, like they bring in like a Randy Moss and don't even use them. What's your thought on that? Like the Titans really not doing much on free agency, and then like the Colts just going out there and they're just going to dominate this, the AFC South.
Well, and you're right. I mean, the Colts made some huge moves. They had cap space. They had money to spend. I think the problem with the Titans sometimes, honestly, is there's 2 different messages going out here. Because what you have is when Tommy Smith goes on radio, he says we're going to be aggressive and we're going to go get people and we're going to make our situation better, And then when you see the actual moves, it just doesn't happen. And that's, I think, the problem. And it's sort of a disconnect that I've thought for a long time. I mean, we keep seeing Nashville, and I've railed on this on my podcast a bunch. We see Nashville all the time as one of the hot new cities to move to, one of the hot cities in America to live in. It's got all of the enticing things, but for some reason, the franchise just doesn't go out and land the big names. And this is a town full of people that are either famous or think they're going to be famous. So I think the fan base wants a famous type of, they want that brand behind the Titans, and that's what the Titans lack. That being said, the sales pitch is what I think a lot of people forget about. And, if you're a free agent, a lot of it's about money. Sure. And this year, unfortunately, the Colts have money to spend. But the other side of all of this is that if you were a free agent and you were sitting there saying, man, I want to go play somewhere, and you had an offer from the Raiders, the Jags, the Colts, and the Titans, what would you do? I mean, you would pick the Colts, right? I mean, there's this moment where they've got such a stacked team and they're situated well. And, I think that there's sort of the rich get richer because it's just an easier sales pitch to somebody to come there, move your family, make your money here. You can make comparable money and you can play with Andrew Luck in a stable franchise, or you can make, comparable money to play in a city where you're not sure if the coach is going to be around. You're not sure if they've got a quarterback. You don't know if they have a running back. I mean, there's so many questions.
So looking at the draft then, you personally, are you not sold on Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota as a quarterback that could come in and make an impact in the next couple of years?
Here's the thing with Winston. He throws a lot of picks, and I know everybody talks about that. I'm a fiddle player. I don't know everything for sure, but I will say that I've talked to like Greg Cosell from NFL Films, who's kind of a quarterback guru. Greg and I talked a lot about it, and he's looked back at those throws. And guys that are smarter than me keep saying that they're not sure that Jameis is really the right answer. That being said, I know a lot of guys are high on him, but Mariota, I just think you don't know. I mean, is he a system quarterback? Can he go in under center? How is he going to play in a normal offense? There's so many variables there that if you're a team, in my mind, if you're a team that's at the top of the draft, you're there, like we said earlier, because they lack playmakers. So if you've got that top of the draft pick and you've got somebody you think could be a playmaker, a lot of people seem to love Leonard Williams for that. There's some guys there that I think are playmakers, and if you're the Titans, why not give yourself the best player on the board?
Right. Well, I mean, do you think the success of like a Russell Wilson, who, I mean, Mariota's been compared to, do you think that's going to really influence a squad or two? Maybe, I mean, because Titans have made a couple moves at defense, free agency, that look good. I mean, to me, it seems like maybe Russell Wilson's success with Super Bowl victory, going back to Super Bowl, I mean, how much does that shape GMs and front offices saying, well, hey, Seahawks did it, maybe we can do it?
Well, and that's a question I've actually asked a few times. And kind of the answer I've been given is that's one example, you know. And the thing with Russell Wilson is he came into a situation where he has a great defense and a killer running back, you know. And that's a situation where you have to ask yourself, if Russell Wilson had gone to a team like the Jags that didn't have that fountain talent around him, would his walk to success been as easy? Russell's, you know, he's obviously shorter. He's got small hands in some capacity, I guess. They're still bigger than mine. You know, and people kept saying that was going to be a bit of a detriment for him, but the Seahawks have found a way to work. But, you know, again, I come back to that and I say there isn't a team in the top 5 of the draft that has Marshawn Lynch. You know, and that's a big part. I'm not saying that's why Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson, but there is an element of any young quarterback is going to struggle if they don't have some of those other elements, and those other elements aren't placed in some of those high draft picks.
Right. I also want to get your thoughts. This past year, obviously, Adrian Peterson, you know, and Ray Rice were huge stories, almost outshadowed anything that happened during the year. Obviously, Adrian Peterson now might be available, might not, but do you think the Cowboys are going to make a move for him, and how do you think that's going to, I guess, impact the league going forward with the discipline that was brought on them, putting players on this on a list where they can't play, they're not suspended, kind of a limbo deal?
Well, I think the Cowboys are going to be in a cap situation where it's going to make it difficult for them, because if you trade for the player, you trade for the contract. So you're talking about, I think Adrian's number this year is upwards of $12 million. I don't know that the Cowboys have that cap space right now. So I think it would take a little work for the Cowboys to get him. That being said, you know, this is a really touchy situation, because I'm a big proponent for playing in the NFL is a privilege, not a right. And there are certain guys that I think lose that right. And, you know, to me, what Ray Rice did was just indefensible, and absolutely he should never have the opportunity to play football again. That's just how I see it. The problem with the Adrian Peterson situation, and even Greg Hardy, another great player that's on the exempt list that's dealing with all of these things, the problem those two guys, the NFL has with those two guys, is that neither of them were found guilty of a felony. You know, so what you have is Adrian Peterson was found guilty of a misdemeanor, the same as, you know, spray painting the side of a building, and Greg Hardy's charges were all dropped. So as much as these guys may be a character issue, there may be a problem with that, I don't know that you can stop them from getting the opportunity to make a living. So they're going to play somewhere. And arguably, if they're going to play somewhere, then the question becomes, why not here? It's a terrible situation, because what Adrian Peterson did to his child is just, I can't even wrap my head around it. But the failing to me is on the judicial system that decided that was only worth a misdemeanor slap on the wrist. Now the NFL, their hands are tied. I mean, he's got to be given the opportunity to play. Somebody's going to find a spot for him. I just don't know that the Cowboys can do it just because of the cap number. And the hot rumor is that the Cowboys are about to sign Greg Hardy. They won't be able to take on both salaries. So they look like they're positioned to want to take on a problem personality. I just don't know that they're going to have the money to take on both of those problems.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Somebody's definitely going to pick up both of those guys, because there's too much talent there, and somebody's, even if it's just somebody so desperate that they need somebody, they will find a team. Now let's switch gears.
Oh, yeah, and listen, I mean, there's also a point with that too, where the spin zone on all of it. You know, if a solid franchise like the Patriots picks up somebody like Adrian Peterson, the immediate spin is that, hey, everybody deserves a second chance. I mean, that's the spin around it.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
If Greg Hardy goes to the Patriots, it's look at the Patriots giving this guy a second chance. But if they go to a team that just isn't perceived, like the Bengals or the Raiders, or teams that are perceived to, you know, care less about character, then all of a sudden it's just another thug getting another opportunity. So it's an interesting moment that he's in. Both of those guys are in, where they sign may actually affect the whole way them being back in the league is perceived.
That's a really good point. Now I want to change gears here a minute, because I know Dave, like he said at the top of the segment, he was very impressed with your setup at Sports Fest, and that means a lot because he was actually really jealous. He's like, I can't believe there's this guy there. He had the setup. That's exactly what we should be doing. So let's talk about your setup and how you got into maybe not how you got into podcasting, but how hard it is for you to get that podcast out every week, because you mentioned you were in, I think, Norway, and you were still putting it out. That's pretty hardcore podcasting right there.
Well, I think the key for me was to once I make a commitment to it, I really wanted to do it consistently. So I had to figure out the right way for the schedule. So when I first launched it, I was just doing little 10-minute segments, and I could just do them whenever and throw them up. And the response was really good from that. I didn't expect that. So then I started doing, 3 shows a week that were just a mix of college football and pro football, and I figured out quickly that was too much time. So it took me a little while to settle into saying, hey, I'm going to be an NFL guy. And once I did that, I settled in and I said, look, I'm going to bring a 1-hour show to life every single Wednesday. Now, the beauty of podcasting is that I can pre-record when I need to. So, for example, week 1 this year, I had Adam Schefter and Greg Cosell and Charlie Daniels were 3 interviews I had that week. But I did Adam, at Friday night at 11 o'clock from the back of a locker room somewhere. And then I did Charlie on a Tuesday morning, So I'm able to take the segments when works best for the guests. That's the real thing that keeps me. I'm really lucky that guys are flexible and giving me some time, and then I'm able to launch it on Wednesday. So, it's a trick sometimes, though, because you have to really make sure you're not getting guys before issues change. But yeah, it became sort of a passion project for me, and I looked at it and said, hey, if I don't do it with everything I've got, then the fans won't give me everything they've got and listen to it every week. So that's been the real focus. But yeah, I take a little case with me everywhere that has multiple mics and a Focusrite input box, and it goes into my laptop, and I usually have 2 or 3 laptops so that I can record interviews while I'm on the internet if I need to be. And it's an undertaking, but it's been really, I'm really lucky that people have taken a lot of time and taken to it and decided they'll love the show.
Nice. Well, it's a very nice podcast, man. I listen to it weekly. I look forward to it coming out. Tell everybody where you can get the podcast, and about your website. You're active on Twitter. Give out all your information where people can find you.
Oh, yeah. The website, jasonfitz.com, super easy, Jason Fitz, F-I-T-Z. And that links you to all sorts of archives. So there's lots of old episodes there. I also pull out some of my favorite interviews from guys we've had so that you can sort of get a taste of that. And then also that the show launches there every week. But it also launches super easy on iTunes. And that's, the modern world. I'm on iTunes. You can go out and just search for The Jason Fitz Show. And once you find it there, you can just click one button and it subscribes and it puts it on your phone automatically every week, which is cool. And then as far as Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff, it's all Jason Fitz Show. So, and I want to be as active as possible. There's this point where I think it's, for any of us, modern sports talk is almost like, this isn't going to be a popular thing to say, but it's almost like the men's version of The View or The Talk or any of those shows. Like, it's a chance for guys to sort of be guys and talk. So to me, it's really important that social media be active. So Jason Fitz Show is the Twitter and Instagram, and it's all there. And the show goes up on there. There's actually a nifty little player that lets you just play it from right there. So it's kind of cool.
Very nice. Well, man, we appreciate you coming on the show. If time allows, we'd love to get you on back again during the middle of the season, maybe give us some insight and your insight. Because, you're very knowledgeable when you talk about it. And if I didn't know you were a fiddle player, I would think you were some kind of sports analyst or something. So
that's what I'm shooting for, buddy. That's what I'm shooting for.
There you go.
I appreciate the time, guys. And I would love to come on anytime, and we'll talk, especially after the draft. We can break down some of these guys and talk about the newest Titan roster guys.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you calling in. Everybody go to jasonfitz.com. Check it out. Get him on Twitter. Tell him you heard about him on the show, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Y'all have a good day.
All right, you too.
You too.